Okay, so imagine for a second the architecture of a typical school. Just, close your eyes if you need to. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, it's almost always the same thing, isn't it? It's long hallways, those fluorescent lights that hum.
The linoleum floors, yeah.
Yeah.
And the bells. Bells
Yes.
ringing at these, like, super specific, rigid times.
And rows of desks, all of them facing the front.
Right. It's basically a factory for learning.
Yeah.
The bell rings, you move. The bell rings, you sit down. It's all about efficiency. It's predictable.
It's designed for mass production, really.
Exactly. But today, we're going to take that whole image, that entire factory model, and we're going to take it apart. We're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating piece by Jaime Hoerricks, a PhD, called Executive Functioning: Schools as Tide Pools, from Roman Bells to Celtic Moons.
And I have to say, right off the bat, this is not your average academic paper. It is not a dry list of statistics on, test scores or ADHD diagnoses.
No, not at all. It's so lyrical. It's almost, I don't know, philosophical.
It is. It's a really radical reimagining of the physics of a classroom. It challenges everything we think we know about time, about growth, and especially about executive functioning.
And the central metaphor, I mean, it just stopped me cold. Hoerricks says we could stop picturing schools as these rigid grids.
And instead picture them as tide pools.
It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? But it sounds a little chaotic.
Well, that's the point, I think. Think about a real tide pool. It's not linear. It's, biological. It's got its own rhythms. It's kind of messy.
Okay, I see.
And that sets up the core conflict right away. You've got this tension between the Roman grid, as he calls it, the traditional school model, and the natural biological rhythms of the actual kids in the system.
So our mission today is really to unpack that shift. We're going from this conversation about compliance, just do what the bell tells you, to a conversation about readiness. And honestly, that changes everything.
It really does. It shifts the whole focus from managing time to really inhabiting it. Should we get into it?
Let's do it. So to really get your head around the tide pool idea, we first have to understand what Hoerricks says is, the status quo. He uses a river metaphor for the modern school, but not a wild river.
No, absolutely not. The text describes it as a river that has been, quote, straightened, scheduled, obedient to bridges.
Obedient to bridges. That phrase is so specific. What does that actually mean for a student?
Well, think about it like an engineer. When you straighten a river, you do it to make the water move from point A to point B faster, more predictably.
You stop it from wandering.
You stop it from meandering, from flooding, from doing anything unexpected.
Yeah.
You're prioritizing the shipping route, not the ecosystem.
I see. So the bridge is the curriculum or maybe the standardized test.
Exactly. And the water, the student is just being forced into that channel. And if the student meanders, if they slow down, if they sort of flood the banks,
We call that a problem.
we call that a disorder. We call it executive dysfunction because the water didn't get to the bridge on schedule.
And the thing keeping that river straight, according to the text, is the Roman grid on the wall. I'm guessing he means the clock.
He does. But he doesn't just call it a clock. He goes pretty hard on it. He calls the 24-hour clock a proudly masculine march of minutes.
Wow. That's a loaded phrase. Proudly masculine march. What's the deeper critique there?
I think he's critiquing the entire Western industrial way of organizing time. It's about dominion. It's about conquering the day by dividing it into these tiny, manageable segments.
It's relentless.
It's relentless, and it assumes time is something you use or you beat, not something you live in. And he points out this massive disconnect that March of Minutes has, and I'm quoting here, never quite understood the wax and wane by which bodies actually grow.
That's the biology. We aren't machines.
Exactly. We run on circadian rhythms, hormonal cycles, we have bursts of energy, and we have slumps. Growth isn't a straight line, but that Roman grid on the wall doesn't care if you're in a slump. It just says, it's 10 o'clock, do math.
It makes me think of that feeling, and I know you've had it, where you're in a meeting and your brain is just offline. It's not that you're refusing to work. It's just not there.
And yet, the scent of dominion, as he calls it, demands that you produce something anyway.
Okay, so that brings us to the counter metaphor, the tide pool. If the school is a straight river, Hoerricks says the children are actually tide pools.
Yes. And a tide pool is not a rushing current, right? It's a collection of pockets and eddies.
Learning in pockets and eddies. I really love that image.
It feels much more true to how brains actually work, especially neurodivergent brains. In a tide pool, you have high tide, low tide. You have these little pockets where life is just, exploding. And then a foot away, there's another pool that looks completely stagnant.
But it's not dead. It's just waiting.
It's gestating. Hoerricks says these learners answer to older calendars than the school clock. They answer to the rhythm of the tides.
This completely reframes executive dysfunction, doesn't it?
Totally. We usually say a kid has a dysfunction because they can't follow the Roman grid. Hoerricks is basically asking, what if they're not broken? What if they're a tide pool on a tidal schedule, trapped in a room that's demanding river behavior?
That is a huge shift. But I have to, play devil's advocate. Schools have to run on some kind of schedule. You can't just say, all right, everyone, learn when the tide feels right.
Mm-hmm.
How does he make this practical?
Well, he brings it down to a surprisingly practical tool. The IEP, the Individualized Education Program.
Which is usually the most bureaucratic, legalistic document you can imagine.
It is. It's a list of deficits. Johnny can't do this, so we will do that. It's very mechanical. But Hoerricks suggests we think of IEPs as seasonal documents.
Seasonal documents. Okay, what does that mean?
It means we have to acknowledge that a student's ability isn't the same all year round. He says, goals written in spring sound different from those written in winter.
That makes so much sense intuitively. I mean, we all feel different in February than we do in May, but we don't plan for that.
We don't. We just draw a straight line from September to June and expect linear progress. But Hoerricks uses this beautiful phrase, readiness shifts the way light shifts across a field.
Oh, I have to read this one specific example from the text because it just nails it. The student who cannot begin at 8 may bloom after lunch like a flower refusing morning frost.
And that is the perfect clash of the grid and the tide pool. The Roman grid says, it's 8 a.m. produce. The tide pool says, I'm frozen, I can't bloom yet.
And if you try to force that flower to bloom at 8 a.m.
You might get compliance, a filled-out worksheet maybe, but you won't get learning. You just get a shattered flower. You're just fighting the frost instead of waiting for the sun.
There's another image he uses that really speaks to, I think, the processing speed issue many kids have. The one about the essay.
Oh, yes. The essay that refuses the worksheet but arrives at dusk carrying its lantern of commas.
Carrying its lantern of commas.
Yeah.
That's just beautiful writing.
It's very poetic, but if you strip the poetry away, what he's describing is asynchronous processing.
Oh, so?
In a normal classroom, we grade on speed. If you don't finish in the 40-minute block, you failed. That's the river. But Hoerricks is saying the actual learning, the essay, the ideas, the commas, it all exists. The student has it. It just arrived late.
It arrived on its own time.
Exactly. And because it didn't arrive on the Roman schedule, we usually give it a 0. We throw away that lantern of commas because it was tardy.
This all leads to what he calls the gestalt timetable.
Yes. Gestalt meaning the whole. The idea is whole before part, meaning before the red pen.
Meaning before the red pen. Every English teacher just felt a shiver down their spine.
They should. Because in our rush for efficiency, that river current, we jump straight to correcting the parts. The grammar, the spelling, we grade the compliance. The Gestalt timetable says, no, wait, let the whole idea form first, even if it's slow.
Trusting that the form will emerge if you just give it space.
Right. And he insists these aren't just, exceptions to the rule. He says they're expressions of a deeper natural order.
Okay, let's go into that natural order, because this is where the text took a turn I really wasn't expecting. We kind of leave the classroom and go into ancient history. He starts talking about the Celtic calendar.
He does. And I think he's trying to show that this Roman grid we live by is actually a pretty new invention. He criticizes our schedule for worshiping its small god of efficiency.
And for being suspicious of celebration.
Which is so true in schools. If you're celebrating, if you're resting, you're off task. You're wasting time.
But he's arguing that older cultures knew better.
He brings up the Celtic festivals, Samhain and Beltane, and calls them engines of learning.
So Samhain is late autumn, right? It's about turning inward.
Yes, reflection, winter, the inner world. And Beltane is spring, daring outward. Fertility. The whole argument is that education needs to be a conversation with earth time.
So there should be times for quiet reflection and times for, bold production.
Exactly. But our system demands daring outward every single day. Test-taking, answering questions. It's constant production, September to June.
It's like we're always in harvest mode. We never let the field lie fallow.
And any farmer can tell you what happens then. You destroy the soil. You burn out the resources.
This is where he brings in the 3 archetypes.
Wow.
The maiden, the mother, and the crone. I mean, how do these fit into a classroom?
You can think of them as different modes of energy, maybe, but he really focuses on one, the crone.
The crone. Which is not exactly a flattering term in modern English.
No, we think of an old hag. But archetypally, the crone is the wise elder. She represents the long view of time, and in this framework, she guards something very specific. She guards kairos.
Okay, let's define that clearly. Chronos versus kairos.
Chronos is clock time. It's quantitative, seconds, minutes, hours. It's the Roman grid.
And kairos.
Kairos is qualitative. It's the right moment, the opportune time. It's when you're in a flow state and the clock just disappears.
The aha moment.
Yeah.
Or getting lost in a good book.
Yes. But more than that, it's the time needed for emotional processing. The crone guards that time. Hoerricks writes that she teaches how long a story needs and how many breaths of fear requires.
How many breaths of fear requires. That line just, wow.
It's the perfect antidote to the anxiety we see in schools. A kid with executive dysfunction is often just paralyzed by fear. Fear of starting, fear of being wrong.
And the Roman clock just screams, you have 5 minutes to get over it and start writing.
Exactly, which only makes the fear worse. The crone, or the kairos perspective, says, take the breaths you need. The task will happen when the fear is gone.
It's so empathetic. But I can hear the skeptics right now saying, this is lovely poetry, but my kid needs to pass their exams. We need rigor. We can't just sit around breathing.
It's the natural pushback. But Hoerricks gets ahead of it. The text says, and this is key, to honor such cycles would not be to abandon rigor, but to relocate it.
Relocating rigor. Okay, what does that actually look like?
It means you shift what you're assessing. You stop assessing compliance and start assessing readiness. So rigor isn't about doing a ton of work really fast. True rigor is asking harder questions like, is the soil warm enough? Does the tide recognize the child?
So if the soil isn't warm, if the kid isn't ready, then forcing them to do the work isn't rigorous. It's just pointless.
It's just a performance. It's make-believe teaching. Relocated rigor means you are rigorous in your observation. You are disciplined enough to wait for the thaw.
That sounds like a much harder job for the teacher.
Oh, it's exponentially harder. It's a complete identity shift. He contrasts the old role, the warden of sand.
Which is such a great futile image. Just trying to police a beach. Hey, sand, stay in your little grid.
Right. You're fighting nature. You'll lose every time. The new role he proposes is the teacher as a careful gull.
A careful gull on the shoreline.
Yeah, watching. Waiting for the tide to expose something, scavenging for those little moments of readiness. The classroom becomes a shoreline with buckets and patient ankles.
Patient ankles. I love that. Just standing in the water, waiting.
It implies you're in it. You're not on a dry dock looking down. You're in the water with them. You're part of that environment.
And the goal of all this is to remove the dominionist from the schedule.
To stop trying to conquer the child's biology and their time. To stop trying to colonize their attention.
And the final line, the final instruction, is maybe the most powerful. Invite the moon to co-author the curriculum.
It sounds mystical, but it's not, really. The moon controls the tides. It controls cycles.
So it's a call to let the natural rhythms of energy, attention, focus, to let them have a say in how we teach.
It's an admission that we, as educators, are not fully in control. It's humble. It makes the teacher a collaborator with nature, not a master of time.
And for the learner, the child, it shifts them from being a broken part in a machine to being a healthy, functioning ecosystem.
That's the whole takeaway. If you look at a tide pool through the lens of a grid, it looks broken, it's messy, it's inefficient. But if you look at it as a tide pool, it's working perfectly. It's just on a different schedule.
Wow. We've gone from the straight river and the masculine march of minutes all the way to the living chaos of the tide pool.
We've rethought the IEP not as a list of what's wrong, but as a seasonal guide that respects that a kid might just be winter soil for a while, and that's okay.
And we brought in the wisdom of the crone, who reminds us that things like fear and stories need kairos time, not clock time.
And we redefined rigor. It's not about marching faster. It's about having the patience to check if the soil is even warm enough to plant.
It's a massive shift in philosophy. It asks us to see executive dysfunction not as a personal failing, but maybe as a mismatch between a biological person and an industrial system.
And really, it's a critique that applies to all of us, not just kids in school.
That is exactly where I wanted to end this, because this isn't just about schools. We're all living under that same Roman clock. We all have that grid on our wall.
We absolutely do, and we beat ourselves up constantly for not being productive at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday just because the calendar says we should be.
So here's the thought to take away with you. If you are feeling stuck somewhere in your life, if you feel like you're failing to meet a goal, or you're just in a major slump,
ask yourself the question that Hoerricks is asking.
Are you broken? Are you dysfunctional? Or are you just winter soil?
What if that feeling of failure is really just you, waiting for the right season to bloom?
Maybe you don't need another productivity app. Maybe you just need to wait for the tide.
And maybe take a few breaths while you're waiting.
Thanks for diving in with us.
Take care.